On November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent. Soldiers climbed out of the mud, believing they had just survived the war to end all wars. But the peace was fragile. The Treaty of Versailles disarmed the German military and imposed severe economic penalties. Back in Germany, the military leadership refused to accept defeat on the battlefield, spreading the myth that they had been stabbed in the back by cowardly politicians. 2 decades later, that resentment boiled over. On September 1, 1939, German troops thrust deep into Poland. The League of Nations proved powerless to stop them, and the globe plunged back into total war. The German army utilized a tactic called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. By integrating two-way radio communication with concentrated armored tank divisions and coordinated airstrikes, they easily outmaneuvered traditional defensive lines. Using this method, Germany conquered France in just 35 days. This rapid advance trapped the British Expeditionary Force against the sea. With 400,000 men stranded on the shallow beaches of Dunkirk, a desperate flotilla of civilian fishing boats, ferries, and lifeboats crossed the English Channel to rescue the surviving army. With mainland Europe secured, the German Luftwaffe began bombing British cities for 57 consecutive nights. They obliterated homes, factories, and cultural centers. Yet the bombing failed to break the morale of the British public or ground the Royal Air Force, forcing a stalemate in the West. Unable to achieve a quick victory across the English Channel, Adolf Hitler looked in the exact opposite direction. He ordered his armies to turn around and prepare for an invasion of the East. This was Operation Barbarossa, the Axis invasion of the Soviet Union. 4 million men deployed in 3 massive thrusts. Army Group North aimed for Leningrad, Center headed straight for Moscow, and South pushed into the resource-rich fields of Ukraine. Initially, the tanks easily penetrated Soviet territory, capturing hundreds of thousands of prisoners. But the speed of the advance stretched German supply lines to their breaking point. When the brutal Russian winter arrived, temperatures plummeted, tank engines froze solid, and the offensive ground to a halt. At the same time, Germany's ally Japan launched a surprise strike on the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor. The attack dealt heavy damage to battleships and infrastructure, but it missed the critical American aircraft carriers, leaving the Pacific Fleet wounded but highly operational. Back in the Soviet Union, the fighting concentrated on Stalingrad. The city produced a quarter of the nation's tractors and tanks, making it highly valuable. Combat quickly devolved into brutal close-quarter street fighting, measured room by room. The Germans struggled here because Hitler had split his southern forces. He sent one half to seize the Caucasus oil fields and the other to take Stalingrad. This decision left both armies dangerously overextended, with weak defensive flanks. Desperate to regain the initiative, the Germans launched a massive armored offensive at Kursk. They relied heavily on their new Tiger and Panther tanks, which were engineered with thick armor and long-range guns, specifically for mobile defensive warfare. The Soviets responded by deploying their T-34s, a mass-produced medium tank favored for its speed and sloped armor. In a single day, 900 of these tanks charged the German flanks at point-blank range. The Axis lost the cream of their armored divisions and never mounted another major offensive in the East. By engaging the seemingly endless manpower of the Soviet military and the untouched industrial factories of the United States, the Axis powers locked themselves into a war of attrition. They simply did not have the numbers or the resources to sustain a fight on 2 major fronts. To prepare for a Western invasion, the Allies had to keep the Germans guessing. They launched Operation Bodyguard, a complex deception campaign. By broadcasting fake radio traffic and building inflatable decoy tanks in Kent, they convinced German intelligence that the assault would land at Pas-de-Calais. The real target was Normandy. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces sailed through the morning mist. As they waded onto the beaches, they stepped directly into overlapping fields of German machine gun and artillery fire, suffering heavy casualties just to secure a foothold. Getting off the beach was only half the battle. They needed to supply a massive army without a captured court. British engineers solved this by constructing giant, hollow concrete boxes, towing them across the channel, and sinking them to form artificial harbors known as mulberries. As the Allies pushed inland and the Red Army drove west through Poland, soldiers stumbled upon facilities like the Majdanek extermination camp. They found direct evidence of the industrial-scale murder of Jewish populations. The liberation of Europe shifted from a tactical military operation to a moral imperative. Stopping the Axis meant dismantling a regime entirely dedicated to systemic genocide. In the Pacific theater, the island-hopping campaign met fanatical resistance. Japanese troops viewed surrender as a violation of their duty to the emperor, ensuring every American amphibious assault resulted in near-total casualties for the defenders. Taking Iwo Jima required weeks of bloody frontal assaults across exposed volcanic ash, but the island held strategically vital airfields, which the U.S. desperately needed as emergency landing strips for their B-29 bombers. With these forward bases secured, American commanders ordered low-altitude night raids over the Japanese mainland. They dropped thousands of incendiary weapons onto densely packed wooden cities, creating towering firestorms that sucked oxygen and burned faster than civilians fled. Despite the destruction, Japan refused to capitulate. Allied planners estimated that a ground invasion of the Japanese home islands would cost hundreds of thousands of American lives. To avoid that outcome, the military authorized the use of an entirely new weapon. On August 6, 1945, a uranium bomb detonated over Hiroshima. The blast generated temperatures of 5,000 degrees Celsius, leveled buildings for miles in every direction, and instantly vaporized tens of thousands of people. The formal surrender of Japan ended the combat, but the peace was immediately fractured. The globe was quickly divided into competing spheres of influence, split between the capitalistic United States and the communist Soviet Union. The bloodiest conflict in human history was over, but by deploying atomic weapons to end it, the victorious powers ensured that any future global war carried the immediate threat of total human extinction.